Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting room or maybe on a Zoom call. It's been a long week. The project is dragging on and your colleague, let's call him Dave, sighs heavily and says, "Look, we're just going to have to bite the bullet on this one." If you're a native speaker, you nod, you know exactly what Dave means. But if you're an English learner, even an advanced one, your brain might suddenly do a screeching halt. Wait, bite a bullet? Like ammunition? Is Dave okay? Is this a hostile work environment? Obviously, no one is chewing on metal. Dave just means we have to face a difficult situation head-on. But these moments, these strange, colorful, completely illogical phrases are everywhere in English. Welcome back to English Bloom. I'm your host, Sarah, and today we are diving deep into the messy, beautiful world of idiomatic expressions and complex sentence structures. We're going to look at how to truly understand sentences and common expressions, not just by translating the words, but by decoding the culture behind them. Whether you're commuting to work, doing the dishes, or just taking a well-deserved break, I'm so glad you're here. All right, let's just get right into it. The single biggest hurdle, the biggest obstacle for B1 and B2 learners isn't usually grammar. You guys know your past perfect continuous. You know your conditionals. The real hurdle is that spoken English is heavily coded. It's like, think of language as an iceberg. The literal words are the 10% floating above the water. The other, 90%, that's context, history, and idioms. Let's go back to Dave's bite the bullet. Why do we say that? Well, historically, before anesthesia was invented, surgeons on the battlefield would give soldiers a lead bullet to bite down on to distract them from the pain of surgery. Oh wow, that's actually a little dark, isn't it? But it makes perfect sense. So today, when your boss says, we have to bite the bullet and cut the budget, they mean we have to endure something painful but necessary. Notice how the literal translation falls completely flat here. If you translate bite the bullet word for word into your native language, people will look at you like you've lost your mind. And that brings me to my first big point today. Stop translating. I know, easier said than done. But when you hear a phrase that doesn't make logical sense, your first instinct shouldn't be the dictionary. Your first instinct should be curiosity. Look at the speaker's face. What's the tone? Are they stressed? Laughing? Take the phrase, the elephant in the room. I love this expression, the elephant in the room. Imagine you're at a family dinner, and two relatives who absolutely hate each other are sitting at the same table. No one is talking about their bitter rivalry. Instead, everyone is talking about the weather. Loudly, awkwardly. That unresolved conflict? That's the elephant in the room. It's a massive, obvious problem that everyone is pretending not to see. Now, if you're an advanced learner tuning in, notice how I just used the phrase bitter rivalry a moment ago. That's a collocation. Collocations are words that naturally pair together. We don't say a sour rivalry or a salty rivalry, we say a bitter rivalry. Learning these natural pairings is the secret sauce, another idiom for you, to sounding truly fluent. But going back to our elephant, what's fascinating about this idiom is how we use it. We usually say, we need to address the elephant in the room. It's a tool for breaking tension. Wait, think about that. English speakers actually use a giant imaginary animal to make uncomfortable conversations slightly less awkward. It softens the blow. Instead of saying, hey, let's talk about the fact that you two hate each other, you say, let's address the elephant in the room. It shifts the blame to the elephant.
Loves! It's brilliant, albeit a little weird, by the way. Albeit spells it ALBEIT, great advanced linking word. It basically means, although it's brilliant, albeit a little weird. Try throwing that into your next conversation.
Shifting gears here? Let's talk about the absolute bane of every English learner's existence. Phrasal verbs. I hear you groaning through the speakers, I really do. Phrasal verbs are verbs combined with a preposition or an adverb like give up, look into, or bring up, and they are everywhere. Why do native speakers use them so much? Because they sound less formal, less rigid. Let's look at a very common scenario. You're finishing a meeting and you want to say, let us conclude this discussion. That's grammatically perfect. But it sounds a bit like a robot, right? Like you're reading from a 19th century manuscript. Instead, a native speaker will almost always say, let's wrap this up. To wrap up, picture wrapping a present with paper and a bow. You're finishing it, making it complete. But here's where English likes to play tricks on you. What happens if an idea or a plan doesn't succeed? What if it fails completely? We might say, the plan fell through. Now I want you to visualize that. Fall through, imagine walking on a wooden bridge, and suddenly the wood breaks, and you fall through the gap. The journey stops, the plan is ruined. When you attach visual imagery to phrasal verbs, they stop being random rules to memorize, and they start becoming little micro-stories. Let's test one. What if I said, I ran into my old boss yesterday? Did I physically sprint down the street and crash my body into my former manager? I mean, hopefully not. That would be a very different podcast episode. Run into just means to meet someone by chance. The tension here, the literal violence of running into someone, is completely removed. It's totally casual. Building on that, I want to talk about how a single sentence can mean 3 completely different things based entirely on how you say it. Let's take a very simple sentence. Right? I'm going to take off. If I'm at an airport, looking out the window at an airplane, take off means the plane is leaving the ground. If I'm wearing a heavy winter coat inside a warm room, take off means I'm removing my clothing. But if I'm at a party, I slap my knees, stand up, and say, right, I'm going to take off. What does that mean? It means I'm leaving. I'm going home. This is where B1, B2 learners often hit a plateau. You know all the definitions of the words, but the context is what dictates the meaning. So, how do you conquer this? You have to consume English like a detective. When you're watching a movie or listening to a podcast, don't just listen to what they are saying. Listen to how they are saying it. Pay attention to the situation. If someone says, well, that's just great, with a heavy sigh, it's probably not great. That's sarcasm. They actually mean the opposite. All right, let me ask what you're probably pondering right now. Sarah, how on earth am I supposed to memorize all of this? You're not. Seriously. You're not supposed to sit down with a list of 500 idioms and memorize them. That idea will fall flat. You know, it won't succeed at all. Instead, you collect them, one by one. You hear wrap up in a TV show, you write it down. The next day, you try to use it in an email. Let's wrap up this project by Friday. Language isn't a test you pass. It's a garden you cultivate. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to occasionally look a little silly when you use the wrong phrase. And believe me, making mistakes is part of the charm. If you accidentally tell someone you want to throw them under the bus instead of give them a ride on the bus, well, it'll be a funny story later. Okay, let's do a quick recap. Let's wrap up what we've covered today. 1. We talked about biting the bullet, facing a difficult situation with courage. 2. We addressed the elephant in the room, that obvious problem nobody wants to talk about. 3. We looked at the collocation bitter rivalry. 4. And we explored some vital phrasal verbs, wrapping up a meeting, plans falling through, and running into an old friend. Now it's time for the listener challenge. I want to hear from you. Take the phrase run into, meaning to meet by chance, and write a sentence with it in the comments, or shoot me a message on our social media. For example, I ran into my old university professor at the supermarket. Get creative with it. I'll read a few of my favorites on next week's episode. Next week, by the way, we are going to delve into the art of polite disagreement. How do you tell someone they are completely wrong without making them angry? It's a delicate dance, and English has some brilliant, subtle ways to do it. You definitely won't want to miss that one. If you enjoyed today's episode of English Bloom, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with a fellow English learner. Your support truly means the world to me and helps the podcast grow. Until next time, keep staying curious, keep making those beautiful mistakes, and keep blooming. I'm Sarah. Catch you later.